Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to get happier, be happier, or find more happiness in your life, then do we have the Happier Show for you. Today I'll be talking with Tal Ben-Shahar, former Harvard professor and one of the leading happiness experts in the world. He's also the author of several fantastic books on happiness, including Choose the Life You Want and Happier. And that's just what I'll be talking with him about today, about how to live a richer, happier life. That plus we'll talk about winning the lottery, life lessons from squash, lifelines versus timelines, why life is too short to be in a hurry, throwing knapsacks over walls, and what in the world's the Hamburger Model. So welcome back to the show, Tal. Are you ready to shine?
Am I ready?
Woohoo! So before we dive right in, I know we've had you on the show before, but I got to go back to your history just a little bit. How old were you and what happened when you won the Israeli national championships?
Yeah, so let me give a little bit of context around that, because that really is what launched my interest in happiness. I was, from a young age, I started playing squash, and very quickly, when I was around 11 years old, I realized that this was my mission. This is what I wanted to do, to be a professional squash player, to play full time. And I dedicated all my time to it. And I must say that when I was playing as a teenager, I wasn't happy. I was constantly stressed. I was constantly felt the pressure each training session. The tournaments were especially painful emotionally. But I got better and better, and I always told myself, Tal, when you win the Israeli national championships, which was my goal at the time, if you win the championship, you get that trophy, then you'll be ready to be happy. Because then it's all my dreams come true. When I was 15, I got to the final of the championship, and I lost the final. I was absolutely devastated. But I said, I could still win, and that kept me going. When I was 16, turning 17, I finally won the championship. And my dream came true. And my hopes came true, because I was truly happy for about 3 hours.
Oh, no.
And after celebrating, with my family, with friends for about 3 hours, the same feeling, the same stress, the same sense that something is missing returned. Only this time it was even worse than before, because I no longer had the illusion to sustain me that when I become the champion, then it will go away. I thought for a while that, okay, now I need to win a bigger championship. Well, maybe a world championship will do it. But I realized very quickly that that wasn't the answer. It was only later that I figured out that what I've been doing is essentially misunderstanding what happiness is all about. That happiness is not about reaching a destination, no matter what that destination is. That happiness is about the journey, the same cliche that we hear over and over again. It's true. Now, unfortunately, it's not as easy as it sounds. Okay, so enjoy the journey, have fun with it. That won't make us happy. In fact, people who say to themselves, "Oh, I want to be happy," or "I want to enjoy the journey," or "I want to live the moment," actually, these pieces of advice turn out to be counterproductive. We become less happy as a result. So over the years, what I've done is I've been studying this topic of happiness and how to become happier, all starting with that one personally very powerful experience.
What was it that, thank you for sharing on that, what was it that flipped the switch? I've been in professional athletics for a long time. I raced bicycles in Europe for a few years. I can't imagine, but I didn't win the national championship. The closest I came was a 7th. But I can't imagine being able to step back enough to say, wait a second, there's something wrong with this chase. How are you able to do that?
There's, let me deviate a little bit. There is a very good chance that a few years from now, we'll be able to medicate away unhappiness. That, today we have medication, but it's not precise, and there are side effects, and it's not always that good. But a few years from now, whether it's through brain interventions, using brain scans and such, whether it's through chemicals, we'll be able to do a much better job of medicating away pain or unhappiness.
Does that scare you as much as it scares me?
Yes, and here is one of the reasons why it does so, is because if you ask people to tell you about their most important learning experiences, they would usually say 99% of the people, and I think this is a very, this is an underestimate probably, 99% of the people would say it was a painful experience, something that happened, you know, a loss of person or a job or a relationship or something that was not good, where they didn't feel good. Now, this is where we learn the most, through painful experiences. And the experience for me of winning the championship, while I experienced elation for the first 3 hours, you know, maybe 4, after that, it was incredibly painful. I mean, can you imagine that I was only 16, but still for probably 6 years, every day I woke up in the morning and I said to myself, when I get to this destination, then I'll be happy. Then this pain, this ease that I constantly felt would be gone. And then it's not. So as a 16-year-old, I mean, the way I expressed it was as tears, but it was more than tears. It was also, my not just my emotion, but my rational faculty, my brain started to work, over hours to try and figure this out. What's going on here? So it was through pain, and it was so painful that I think it was painful enough for me to start a new journey. Unfortunately, there are no shortcuts to growth.
I just realized you basically shattered a paradigm, and you had no idea where in the world to go from there.
Yes, exactly. A paradigm, a dream, a strong belief, and I had to reevaluate, change course.
So you changed course, you started studying psychology. In fact, there wasn't, when you were studying, positive psychology, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't even exist as a field.
No, it didn't exist as an official, coherent field with psychologists who call themselves positive psychologists. However, the study of happiness is as old as human beings are. We know that Aristotle wrote about it, and certainly people before him did. Confucius wrote about him, and probably people before him did as well. So it's something that people have always thought about, because an innate desire of ours is to look for happiness.
I thought it was very cool when you started teaching at Harvard. I'm not sure how long you had been there, but you started a positive psychology seminar. How many people showed up?
Yeah, so 8 people showed up. 2 of them dropped out, which left me with 6 and a bruised ego, I must admit. And then a year later, it grew, and I started offering it as a lecture course. And within 3 years, I had close to 900 students in that class.
And how scared were you? Yes,
very scared. I'm an introvert, so right now I'm in my comfort zone. It's just you and me, right? So, but whenever there are more than, I'd say probably 10 people, I get nervous. And I had many more than 10 people that class. So yes, I was nervous.
So, and as I understand it, up to that point, the largest class at Harvard.
It was the largest class that year, and the largest class in the history of the psychology department.
Wow. So let's go from there, and let's start talking about, maybe we should get a definition on happiness. How would you define happiness?
Yeah, so I'll give you 2 definitions.
Okay.
One, which I write about in my book, Happier. A second one, which I've evolved into over the years. So in my book on happiness, I talk about happiness as the combination of meaning and pleasure. Yeah. Meaning and pleasure. So for example, let's say I'm working in a place where I find the work important, significant, where I experience a sense of purpose when I get up in the morning. And I enjoy going to work. Yeah, there are ups and downs, like in every workplace, throughout every life. But overall, I enjoy myself there. So I'm experiencing both meaning and pleasure. Well, then I'm happy at work. Or if I'm in a relationship where my partner and I are building something together. It's meaningful. It's important for us what we're doing. And we enjoy spending time together. We experience pleasure. Yeah, of course, we have our disagreements and conflicts like every relationship does. But overall, we experience pleasure. Then it's a happy relationship, both meaning and pleasure. Now, having said that, it's not about experiencing meaning and pleasure all the time. It's the overall experience of these two, of meaning and pleasure. So that is what I wrote about in my book, and I elaborated, and I still stand very much behind it. Today, I've expanded on this, on my understanding of happiness, and today I see it as something which is broader. And let me explain. You know, Helen Keller talked about happiness as wholeness, WH, wholeness. And I tend to agree with that, because I think that if we want to experience happiness, we have to think about our whole person. And we have to think about whole person well-being. Or if I had to put these two terms together, whole person well-being, I would talk about whole being. And
what do you mean? I've got to dive in. What's whole being?
Whole being is, again, a synthesis. It's a term that few of my colleagues and I coined. Whole being is whole person well-being. And what it refers to is the well-being of the different components of the person.
Okay.
Essentially, I've written or spoken about 5 such elements, which are taken from different thinkers and around the world and from different eras. And the 5 elements of whole being are spiritual well-being, physical well-being, intellectual well-being, relational well-being, and emotional well-being. And if you can picture these spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional, the acronym is SPIRE. And it's a very apt acronym. Now, I've lived in the US long enough to be an acronym junkie. So I was looking very hard and wide for this.
Our upcoming group coaching program, our upcoming book is I Shine Bright. So ISHINE, so forth. So yes.
Good. So I'm all for that. People remember it better. So the spire, the meaning of the word spire is, the highest point on a building. So it's also about inspiration. Obviously, the root of spirituality. So these elements all point or shine a light on the real nature of happiness, which is a spiritual experience. It's also very much connected to our physical well-being. It's very much about thinking and engaging in thought and curiosity. It's also about relationships, naturally, and it's an emotional experience too.
I'm getting goosebumps, and this is a topic we talk about a lot, and you just, in reverse order, you went for what people typically leave out in their quote-unquote pursuit of happiness. I don't have time for the spiritual side of things. I know it's important. I don't have time for it. I certainly don't have time for the physical side of things. And though I really want to improve my relationship, I've got to work extra hard if we're going to get someplace and be happy someday. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And people wonder how come happiness levels are not going up. There was a wonderful article written in 1999 by one of my mentors, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and the title of that article was, "If we're so rich, why aren't we happy?" If we're so rich, why aren't we happy? And the answer is because we're looking for happiness in the wrong places. Again, just like I looked for it in the success or the next success, in the achievement of goals. We look for it in prestige. We look for it in money. It doesn't exist there. Rather, it exists in the very things that actually our grandparents or great-grandparents understood and lived by, and that is a sense of meaning and purpose in life, that's experiencing life as a spiritual journey, or being physically active, which they didn't need to go out of their way to go to the gym. They just worked,
Yeah.
and work was physical as opposed to stationary.
You talk about in your book Happier, and it's kind of going in that direction. You talk about, for instance, Daniel Goleman and emotional intelligence, how there's a higher risk of depression with each generation, and how the statistics have flip-flopped on their heads from what wealth versus meaning, I believe it is.
Yes, exactly. So if you ask people going into college, and this was actually asked back in the 1960s or earlier, what's the most important thing that you're looking for?
Mm-hmm.
They would say something associated with meaning, with a sense of purpose, with and such. Whereas if you ask most people today what they would like to get out of college or of life in general, most would say things that are completely extrinsic to the individual, such as wealth and fame. I want to be a celebrity. I want to be rich. And they say it from a very young age, which is even more disturbing. And that's unfortunate, because if we pursue these things, we're very, very unlikely to find happiness and fulfillment.
When I coach and I have people write their intentions down and their dreams, their hopes and dreams for the future, I always like it to link it to the emotional state. What are you really trying to get at? And it sounds like we've lost that link.
Yes, we've lost this link because Ralph Waldo Emerson talks about it. He says how the voices that we hear mostly are the external voices, the voices of others. Now, the most dominant voices in our culture today are voices that we hear from the media, mm-hmm. or things that we see or read in magazines, on TV. And the message that sends us is absolutely the wrong message. It's mostly about quick fixes. It's a lot of violence, a lot of cheap love or sex, and the important things and the meaningful things in life almost don't find their place in the media. We're looking for the fast solution. It doesn't exist, and we need to go back. We need to go back to basics.
What is a model? Maybe we should jump into the hamburger model, because I'm wondering what a back to basics model looks like.
Good. Yeah. So the hamburger model. I'll give the context around it. I was training very hard for a squash tournament, and when I always eat healthfully, always did. However, I would sometimes sin, so to speak, and I'd have unhealthy food, and my mm-hmm. favorite unhealthy food was our local hamburger joint where I live, and before the very big tournament that was coming up, I refrained from eating hamburger. I only ate the healthiest of foods. And after the tournament, I promised myself that I would then indulge.
Yeah.
And the tournament came and went, and I went to my favorite hamburger joint. And I remember that day as if, it happened 30 years ago. Wow. It seems like it was yesterday. I went to my hamburger joint, and I sat down about to eat my hamburger, the one I've been fantasizing about for many weeks. And as I was about to eat it, I put it down, and I didn't want it. And the reason why I didn't want it is because at that time, after that training regime, my body felt very clean. My mm-hmm. body felt very, very vital, and I didn't want to spoil it. But it was at that point that I came up with the hamburger model. And the hamburger model is as follows. There are a few different types of hamburgers. One type of hamburger was the one that I just turned down. Mm-hmm. This was the tasty, for sure, my favorite, but unhealthy. Mm-hmm. Then there was another alternative. There was the healthy hamburger. But at that time, 30 years ago, I didn't find healthy and tasty hamburger. So it was tasty, but it was healthy, but not tasty. So this was, I called it the vegetarian burger. Then there was a third type of hamburger, which was neither tasty nor healthy. And finally, there was the ultimate hamburger, the one that's both healthy and tasty. And I thought about these four archetypes of hamburgers, and I said that, we can lead life in accordance to each one of these burgers. So, for example, let's take the one that I just turned down, the unhealthy but tasty burger.
Gotcha.
So this would be about a person who lives life for the moment. They do things that they enjoy now, but they're not thinking about, future. They're not thinking about a purpose. It doesn't matter. Just live the moment. Be a hedonist. Then you have the hamburger that's not tasty, but healthy, the vegetarian burger. These are people who live for the future. Okay, so I'm not enjoying myself now, but what I'm doing is important. It's meaningful, looking forward, looking ahead. Then you have people who are in the other archetype, which is not healthy nor tasty. These are the people who are, not going through a good time. They're depressed, they're unhealthy, they can't see a future, they don't enjoy the present. And finally, there is what I've come to call the happiness burger, which is both healthy and tasty. It's for people who are enjoying their present moment, and they're also experiencing a sense of calling, purpose, meaning for the future. These are people whom I talk about who would be happy at work or happy in a relationship because they have both meaning and pleasure.
And it sounds like for the happiness burger, you have to make it so that it's not always available, or you might not appreciate it as much.
So here is the thing. It's many people who go through my workshops and seminars, especially the longer ones, often say to me, Tal, I'm a little bit concerned because one of the things that I talk about in my workshops is the importance of painful experiences for growth and development, as we spoke a few minutes ago. But they come to me and they say, I'm concerned because what if I'm able to master these positive psychology tools to such an extent that I won't experience those painful emotions? In other words, that I'll be in this happiness archetype in the hamburger model all of the time, or just about all of the time, and I won't experience those painful emotions, and I won't grow, and how will that affect my life? And I say to them, don't worry, life will take care of it. And life does take care of it. So people come to me and say, Tal, now that you're an expert in positive psychology, you know all these studies and you've written all these books, so are you happy all the time? And I said, what, are you kidding? There are no people who are, it's just not possible. Fortunately, by the way, because it makes life more interesting.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, though I have a mantra about this, which is kind, gentle, easy, good. Because universe, source, God, whatever we want to call it, I believe will keep giving us lessons and teachings throughout life. So I ask for them in the gentlest, kindest way possible, because I think the most dangerous expression you can use maybe in the world is I'm bored. Because something's coming to make life interesting.
Yes, you know the Chinese curse, which is may you live in interesting times.
Oh, not the word interesting.
Yeah. So
we had on a astrologist recently, 2.5 months ago, and she said Jessica was taking a trip to Taiwan the next week, and she said, "Oh, that's interesting. Her trip to Taiwan is going to be interesting."
Oh, wow. Did she cancel the trip immediately?
Oh, well, it might have been wise, but she got some great learnings out of it, and the fever eventually subsided.
Okay.
She got to come home, and at least a day and a half or two out of the 2 weeks she wasn't sick. So
okay,
it was interesting.
Yes,
so
indeed.
From there, can you tell us about, this seems so important today, maybe more than ever, what's a rat racer and what's wrong with that model?
Yeah, so the rat racer model is the equivalent of the non-tasty but healthy hamburger. Mm-hmm. It's about, I'm not going to enjoy myself now, but in the future, that's when I'll gain the benefits. And that is probably the most, not probably, it's definitely the most pervasive archetype in certainly in the Western world, and increasingly more in the East. And what that is about is always thinking about the future. It's foregoing present benefit, it's foregoing pleasure all for some future goal. The problem with that is that that future goal, even in the best case scenario, when we do get there, doesn't yield the kind of happiness that it's expected to yield. So there's a lot of research on what happens when we achieve our goals. What happens when the rat racer's wet dream comes true? The answer is not very much, actually. So let me give you some extreme examples that I talk about in my book. One is research done by Daniel Gilbert. So Daniel Gilbert, professor at Harvard, went to professors at universities at the most important, critical point in their career. And that was when they were about to hear whether or not they received tenure. Now, for a professor, receiving tenure, until they receive it, is the focal point of what they do for most of them. So he asked them a very simple question. He asked them questions such as, how are you going to feel if you get tenure? Now, naturally, the answer was ecstatic, extremely happy. And then he asked them another question. How long are you going to be ecstatic or happy for after you receive tenure, if you receive it? And they said, well, probably for the rest of our lives, because, this is my life dream. After I receive tenure, I can relax. I can do whatever research I want. There won't be that pressure to publish or perish, and so on. And then he asked them, what if you don't get tenure? How will you feel? And they said, we're going to be devastated. And how long are you going to be devastated for? And they said, well, for a very long time. Because, if you don't get tenured at one university, first of all, you may not ever get tenured. But even if you do, it's almost inevitably at a lower ranking university. So, this is a devastating blow to academics. And then he went to them at the point when they received the news, good or bad news. And those who got tenured were indeed ecstatic. Those who didn't get tenured were devastated, as they predicted. But when he went back to them a few months later, almost without exception, they all went back to where they were before they heard about the tenure. Meaning those who were happy before were happy after whether or not they got tenured. Those who were unhappy before were unhappy whether or not they got the tenure.
And it's fascinating because those who were, how do I put this? The chase, you can be miserable through the chase, or you could be, in a sense, choosing happiness through the chase.
Yes, and the way to choose happiness is to disassociate yourself, detach yourself from the outcome. Because, the outcome, yes, if you get tenure, of course you'd be happy. If you don't get tenure, of course you'd be devastated. But that doesn't last. That's not what most of our life is about. Most of our life is about the day-to-day. And the key is to learn to enjoy those steps along the way.
You mentioned, thank you. You mentioned earlier Spire, and I want to come back briefly to spirituality. What does that mean or look like in terms of such a broad term in terms of happiness? Yes.
So, first of all, the thing about spirituality and the reason why so many people reject spirituality is because they equate it with religion. Now, there's no question that people who are religious do experience a sense of the spirit, much more so, and there are many studies that connect religion to happiness. However, we can experience spirituality without being religious. So if I experience a sense of purpose and meaning in what I'm doing, then I'm experiencing what I do as a spiritual experience. So that's one way, experiencing a sense of purpose. There's another way of experiencing spirituality. If I really focus, if I'm really mindful of anything, it could be of the person I'm speaking to at the moment. It could be of a flower as I walk outside. It could be of an airplane flying by, a man-made wonder. Whatever it is that I'm really looking at and I'm really mindful of, looking deeply into it is a spiritual experience. Albert Einstein once said, there are two ways in which we can look at the world. One is as if nothing is a miracle. The other is as if everything is a miracle. And if you really look at life, you see that everything is a miracle.
Woohoo!
Shine on.
I love it. Let's go from there. And I think when you say everything is a miracle, you really start to see, if you can grasp onto this, you start to see the world more like childlike eyes. And everything. I'm looking at a pink sticky note here that's a reminder for my camera settings. You're looking at the pink sticky note going, that's cool.
That's right. And it really is about recapturing that child's mind, child's heart, and applying it to our day to day. You know, I remember when our eldest was less than 2 years old. Each time we would go into a tunnel, and a tunnel can be our underground parking in our home, or a tunnel that was excavated in a mountain. It didn't matter. Every time we went into a tunnel, he used to say, "Wow." And it's become part of our family ritual that every time we enter a tunnel, wow, because it is a wow. It is amazing.
For myself, and we lived on Maui for about 3.5 years, my wife and myself, and there's, on the way across Maui, there's a tunnel through a tiny little mountain, and every time I go in that tunnel, beep, beep, gotta hear the foot of beep, beep, and then you're having fun because you beeped and you heard the echo, and somebody else is typically on vacation on Maui, imagine that, and then they're beeping too because they're in the place of childlike awe because they're on vacation. The tunnel is fun.
Yeah.
From there, can you talk briefly about, since maybe we'll work backwards through a couple of these, physical then?
Yeah. So, the connection between mind and body is indisputable. I'll start with an anecdote. Sometimes I exercise every other day. So one day on, one day off. That's when I do my, quote unquote, real exercise. Obviously, I do a lot of walking and otherwise, but in the gym. And sometimes I come home and I'm a little bit more anxious or a little bit, feeling the stress more. And my wife can immediately tell, she knows me pretty well. And she says, "Tal, when was the last time you exercised?" And almost inevitably, I hadn't exercised for more than 2 days. Now, this is just anecdotal. The research out on physical exercise is mind-boggling. Regular exercise, at least 3 to 4 times a week, has the same impact on our psychological well-being as our most powerful psychiatric medication. We now today know more and more how much nutrition impacts our overall well-being. We know that we have a lot of these the equivalents of brain cells in our belly, and what we ingest matters a lot for our well-being. We also know how important sleep is. Getting enough rest for this body and mind of ours, and also the physical element. I would include touch in it.
Cool.
As a culture, we've lost touch with touch, and that's unfortunate. And we need to regain the connection to the body, whether it's through exercise, whether it's through nutrition, whether it's through sleep or touch.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. From there, I'm just going to keep rolling backwards here. It just inspired, no pun intended with the spire, but relationships.
Yeah, number one predictor of happiness, relationships. There's a lot of research on national level of happiness, and unfortunately, the United States is not doing so well relative to other countries, despite being the wealthiest countries in the world. And the reason is, the main reason is that there is not enough emphasis, once again, on the fundamentals, on the basics, on relationships. So we spend less and less time with other people, hanging out, and when we do spend time with people, it's very often distracted time. We're texting at the same time, or listening to something, and we're not there. And the real connection that exists between people is critical for a happy life. The happiest countries in the world are actually countries like some of the Latin American countries, Colombia, Costa Rica. Israel is one of the happiest countries in the world. Australia, Denmark, the one common element among these countries, the happiest countries in the world, is that relationships are a priority. There is a strong social bond among people.
I've heard that a greater predictor, I'm not sure exactly how it works, a greater predictor of longevity or whether somebody will have a heart attack is close personal connections or not. Not smoking, not food, not anything.
Exactly. Relationships are the most important. And, this is, you're referring to the longitudinal Harvard study.
Yes.
That clearly demonstrated the importance of relationships for health and for happiness, again, because the two are interlinked. So, if you have an option between, if you give people the option between getting a raise and being promoted to a management position versus cultivating an intimate relationship, most people today, when push comes to shove, will choose the former. Big mistake. Now, fortunately, we don't have to decide between the two. We can have both. But sometimes sacrifices are necessary, and it's in fact, I think the word sacrifice is not right, because it's not sacrificing. If anything, you're enhancing it, you're helping yourself and others become happier.
Well, it's something you talk about in the book. Happier is what is real currency.
Right. So, when people talk about currency, they think about money. But if you think about the ultimate currency, it's happiness. Because even money, it's a means towards an end. Nothing good will come out of the fact that I just have, I could have $1 billion of Martian currency. I mean, what does that mean? But if that currency can be translated into something that will yield happiness, then it's worthwhile.
So let's go to the last two. What is I again?
The intellectual well-being. The I is not emphasized enough in today's culture. You see, we are, as Aristotle put it, rational animals. Mm-hmm. And by the fact of being rational animals, it means that we have a mind to think with, and it's something that we need to utilize. Just like we have a body and we should utilize it, we should utilize our mind. There's a real connection between levels of curiosity and happiness, for example. And people who are curious, who are open, who want to learn more, are also happier, not to mention healthier as well. All these things are connected. Also, when I talk about intellectual well-being, I'm also talking about learning things in depth. So it's not just about, okay, let me, I'll browse 100 web pages today and, I'll gain some new information. That's not the kind of learning that will yield intellectual well-being. Intellectual well-being will come when I, for example, read a poem that I love and then reread it again and think about it in the context of my life. Or I get into a book that I'm passionate about, or I study a work of art, or I go out in nature and study the fascinating world around me. Intellectual well-being is not just about being, book smart, not at all.
You're mentioning there, in each one of those examples, we're talking about being proactive in a sense versus reactive. You're actually doing something with it.
Yes, exactly. It's being proactive and going deeply into that activity. So it's not just surface understanding, it's deep learning that is critical.
Is there one exercise on that note that you would recommend people dive into deep on this happiness journey?
Yes, absolutely. You mean the intellectual well-being or in general?
Either way. I was thinking intellectual, but either way.
Yeah, so in terms of intellectual well-being, what I recommend is on a regular basis, it could be once a week, is make a point to watch or listen to a podcast or a TED lecture, or at least once a week. If you have more time, even more. But do it even during your busiest times, because that's usually when you need it most. Another thing that I would do is I would put aside an hour for, it doesn't have to be once a week, it can be once every other week or even once a month, but an hour to focus on one thing. That could be either a paragraph that you've read and enjoyed from a self-help book, from a novel, Shakespeare, whatever, it doesn't matter. But to put aside an hour and to read it and reread it and then to reflect on it and word by word, to go deeply into that paragraph. Or alternatively, if you're not into reading and don't want to do that, go outside and just look at one flower or one tree and just really look at it and observe it and think about what are the messages that I'm getting as I closely and deeply study that object or that paragraph.
Talk about presence too.
Absolutely. It's connected to being mindful.
Can you tell us about the E then?
Yeah, so the E in many ways is the product, the culmination of the first four. Because if I experience a deeper sense of purpose in life, I'm more likely to experience emotions. If I'm mindful, I'm more likely to experience positive emotions. Same as if I enjoy reading a text or if I go exercise. But there's more to it. Emotions is also about being open to every kind of conceivable human emotion. It's about full acceptance. It's about what we had talked about before, the permission to be human, giving ourselves the place, the space to experience any and all human emotions. Because when we reject emotions, the painful emotions, they intensify. So it's welcoming in, bring it on.
It kind of takes us full circle to what we were talking about in the beginning, which is having a pill that it's sort of like Botox for the brain if you had a happiness pill.
Yes, exactly. And again, a wonderful book, one of the books that I certainly experienced a lot of intellectual well-being reading is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, where he talks about the soma, that pill that will make all your troubles go away.
Yeah, and your motivation and your drive and your desire and meaning and on and on.
Right.
So what advice would you give to parents today to help their kids on this happiness journey?
Yeah, being a parent today is very challenging because very often being a good parent means going against the grain. I'll just give two examples. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we do at home with our kids is that we limit their screen time. So the amount of time that they can, watch TV or, play or be on the phone. And it's limited in a radical way. Now, this goes against what most parents do at home because most kids, come home and, they may have to do homework or they may come back from sports and then they're glued to the TV for hours. This is terrible. This is actually very bad for us. Especially given the fact that much of the content is unhealthy content. So it's both the quality and the quantity of screen time that's problematic. The other thing is, where it's very difficult being a parent, is when it comes to nutrition. So what we know, we know very little in comparison to what I hope where we'll be 50 years from now about nutrition. But there are certain things that we know for sure. One of the things that we know for sure is that the Western diet is by and large unhealthy. Mm-hmm. So, the unrefined carbs and the sugars, all these things are very bad for us. And yet these are the things that you find most commonly in schools, in lunch boxes, in homes. And as a parent, it's your role to counter that. I don't think one should go to the extreme. I think it's actually unhealthy going to the extreme because the body doesn't develop the necessary immune system. Yeah. But it's certainly necessary to limit junk consumption. It's whether I'm talking about food or media.
I like that. And when you said junk consumption, and I was immediately thinking of some of the movies that are out, and we don't realize how much that is programming our minds.
Very, very much so. The fact that kids are watching, at least 30% of their time is watching ads, that affects their minds. Mm-hmm. It affects our minds as adults, even more so when you have a very pliable and flexible mind, like the child's.
Yeah, and it makes sense when you're seeing a glowing screen in front of you, you become in almost this hypnagogic state where you're very impressionable. Yeah.
Yes.
A couple quick wrap-up questions, and we'll jump into a real brief meditation. First off, what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
The woohoo factor for me is my family, hands down. It's spending time. We're just on vacation in Washington D.C. So walking around the beautiful streets there, and then going to the Air and Space Museum
Cool.
with the kids and with my wife. That was just woohoo big time.
Woohoo! Where can people go to find out more, to find your work and your beautiful books?
Well, thank you. So my website is talbenshahar.com. And there I have links to my online lectures and courses and also to my books.
Fantastic. If you're driving down the road and you didn't catch Tal's website, come on over to inspirenationshow.com. We'll get you over to him as well. Before we jump into a brief meditation, any last words of wisdom you'd like to share?
The journey and the destination are actually one. Meaning we can look at every moment as our destination, and we can look at and every destination is also a moment. And the question is, how do we make the most of it? How do we make the most of each moment? And the way we make the most of it is by being open to life. Because ultimately, if we're open to life, then we'll experience pain and joy, and we'll learn and we'll grow, and we'll be open to people and to experiences. As I said before, just bring it on with all the pain and sorrow and joy and ecstasy.
Woohoo!
Exactly. Bring on the hoo-hoo.
I like it. Thank you. So do you have a brief meditation you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
Yes. How about we do just, a couple of minutes? Meditation is... there's a lot of research on the benefits of meditation. And if we take just a few minutes, it could be, as few as 3 minutes a day, to just center ourselves. That can make a big difference, not just for the experience of those 3 minutes, but for the time that comes after as well. So why don't we experience? And the first thing, just make yourself comfortable wherever you are. If you're driving, please do not follow the next set of instructions, which is to gently close your eyes.
Thank you.
And bring your attention to your breath. Breathe in slowly, gently. Try and fill up the space of your lungs and, if possible, your belly with a breath. And then slowly and gently breathe out. Deep, slow, gentle, quiet inhalations, followed by slow, gentle, quiet exhalation. And just focus on the air, the life-giving breath going in and going out. If your mind wanders, just bring it back to your breath. The air filling up the space of your lungs and your belly, and then exiting your body as your belly and your lungs drop. Now bring to mind one thing that you're grateful for. It could be work that you find meaningful. It could be a relationship that you savor. It could be a flower outside your home. And just visualize, if your eyes are closed, just visualize that one thing. That one thing that you're grateful for. Experience whatever emotion comes up with the visualization of that object, of that person, of that experience. And now return to your breathing. Slow, deep, gentle inhalation, followed by slow, gentle, quiet exhalation. There is so much good in the world. There is so much good in life. And with all its ups and downs, difficulties, hardships, there is also so much joy and pleasure and meaning. And often all we need to do is appreciate what life has to offer, appreciate the good in our life. For when we appreciate the good appreciates. We have more of it. Continue breathing slowly, gently, and deeply. And if your eyes are closed, with the next exhalation, open your eyes. Especially if you're asleep.
Woohoo! Thank you, Tal. This has been so much fun, a true joy, a pleasure. I think it'll bring some happiness to the world.
Thank you, and thank you for the very meaningful work that you do, Michael. Really terrific. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Got to crank it up for the finish here. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get happier, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!